Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3, 5, ABC. If you're happy and able, let's kneel for a prayer, and we'll begin. Our Father in heaven, I'm asking tonight that you would join us here by your Spirit, that you would be our teacher. And I ask for this gift in the name of Jesus. Amen. I'm going to tell a children's story, and then an adult story, and then give you a Bible study, and then we'll be done with our time tonight. First, the children's story. I live in Malaysia on an island that has an island. There is a big island called Borneo in Malaysia, but I don't live on it. I live on a mountain, and my mountain has 4 types of monkeys. We have one type of monkey that has a little curly tail. They call it the pig-tailed monkey. Then we have a long-tailed macaque, and we have a white-thighed Cerilli. But my favorite monkeys of all are the dusky leaf langurs. They have like white eyebrows here and a little white mustache here, and they're just cute. And I like to watch the monkeys jumping from tree to tree to tree. But do you know, when monkeys jump from tree to tree to tree, they don't really jump from, say, an elevation of 40 feet to an elevation of 40 feet. When they jump, they start high and they land low. They jump like this, kind of like you would if you jumped off a house. You wouldn't jump off a house, but if you did, it'd be like that. And they do that so they can go further. But when they land, they have a lot of force pushing them down. And they grab the branch, and the branch bends and bounces back up. That's how it's supposed to go. It doesn't always go that way. Sometimes the branch bends and breaks. But that doesn't scare the monkeys, because the monkeys never aim for the lowest branch. And when the branch breaks, they just open their arms and legs and catch the next one on the way down. Isn't that smart? So I was watching the monkeys, and they were jumping tree to tree to tree, and they were about to cross the road I was walking on, and one of them did cross the road. He jumped. He landed nicely. The branch broke, which isn't uncommon. He put out his legs to catch the next one, his arms and legs, but some person had cut the branches beside the road. And when he put out his arms and legs, there was no more branches to catch. And down, 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 down he came, and he hit the ground. I thought the monkey was going to die. Now, monkeys do die. That does happen. And I thought I was going to see it, but it didn't happen. The monkey was alive, and he was so alive, he didn't even stop. He didn't sit there and brush himself off. As soon as he hit the ground, he jumped up and he ran to a tree and climbed up. Now, would anyone like to guess why he ran so fast? I mean, wouldn't you just sit there for a while? It's because of dogs. We have dogs on our mountain, and the dogs love monkeys or hate them, whichever way you want to look at it. But they love to bite them. And so the monkeys can't spend any extra time on the ground. They have to hurry up and get to the tree. I've thought a lot about that story. If you have a Bible, if you're old enough to have a Bible to use one, look at Proverbs 24:16. Proverbs 24, verse 16, has an idea for you to consider when you think about monkeys falling out of trees. Proverbs 24:16, it says, a righteous man falls. Do you see a number next? 7 times. A righteous man falls 7 times, a just man it says, doesn't it? Falls 7 times and rises again. What's the difference between a good man and a bad man? Is it like this? The bad man makes mistakes and the good man doesn't. Is that the difference between a good man and a bad man? The difference is the good man gets up. How many times does a good man get up? The same number of times that he falls. That's the difference between a righteous man and an unrighteous man. The righteous man is the one who gets up the same number of times that he falls. Now, one more thought about the monkey, and we'll go on to the story for the adults. The monkey didn't sit there because he knew that he's much more vulnerable. It's much easier for the dogs to get him when he's on the ground. On the ground, who's faster, dogs or monkeys? The dogs are faster on the ground. He knows it's a bad place for him. Do you know the devil's a bit like those dogs? He watches to find when you make a mistake, when you yell at your mother, when you end up taking something that isn't yours, when you say a bad word. I mean, you know the kind of mistakes that you make. People make different types. The devil watches when you make your mistakes. And when he sees you make a mistake, that's when he really tries to get you. Now he's going to try to discourage you. Because some people, they try to live a good life, they make a mistake, and they just give up. That happens to a lot of people. This is for the older folks here. Many people, when they quit smoking, they have this experience. They try, they go a week or two without smoking, and then they make a mistake, and they just give up. Happens a lot. But what you want to learn from the monkey is when you make a mistake, how long do you need to sit there before you make it right? You know, you don't even need to wait 1 minute before you say you're sorry. You don't even have to wait 1 hour before you let God know that you did the wrong thing. You don't have to wait even 5 minutes before you tell your mom that you're sorry. You can make things right away. It's the only safe thing to do. You need to get back up in your tree, like as soon as can be. So that's the thought for the children, but adults could use it. Adults, you can use that story too, right? Because I've met some adults that have grudges for years. That doesn't make any sense at all if you're a Christian. No sense at all. It doesn't make any. But now for you, older people. But younger people, you can listen to the story for the older people. I was walking on the road in Indonesia maybe 3 months ago when a motorcycle drove up beside myself, and I had Heidi was with me on this side. The man driving the motorcycle is named Aub, A-U-B. Aub asked where we were going. The answer is, we were just walking for exercise. But that didn't make any sense to him, why you would walk for exercise. So he asked again, where are you going? And we weren't going anywhere. We were just walking. So he invited us to come to his place, and we did. We went to his house. I found out that 7 years ago, Aub began searching for the truth. He grew up as a Muslim. I am so used to saying Muslim, but you want to say Muslim, and I'm going to try to get it right every time I say it here. He grew up as a Muslim, and there his parents were pretty strict, but he wasn't really sure about it. And then to make a long story shorter, he had a bad experience and decided to leave Islam behind. He was so angry at the maker of his local mosque, which stole his property, so angry. So he began searching. And first he tried the Protestant church. That's a little bit like your church. But he didn't find anything there that he was looking for. So then he tried the Catholic church. But he didn't find anything there like what he was looking for. So he tried going to a Buddhist temple. And he didn't find there anything like what he was looking for. So he went to a Hindu temple, and he found it. He found supernatural power like he hadn't experienced in Islam. And so Aub, when he drove up on his motorcycle, was a Hindu. His wife, however, was a Muslim. And their children were confused because mom goes to mosque on Friday, dad goes to the Hindu temple whenever there's a special day, and you understand, confused. So What's the moral to this story? Is there one? There is. I wish someone had come to Oob's home 7 years ago. I wish one of you had done it. I wish one of you had, because if you had been to his house, you would have saved him a lot of confusion. You would have saved his family a lot of confusion. But there's some irony in the world right now. I'm going to tell you about some of that irony, because I like the idea that people in Maine become missionaries. I like that idea. Here in North America, roughly 1 in 350 people are Seventh-day Adventist. In Jamaica, I don't know, I'm going to say roughly 1 in 10.
1 in 7.
Someone said 1 in 7. In Peru, maybe about 1 in 50. Bolivia, about 1 in 70. The Philippines, about 1 in 100. Guam and Micronesia, it's a very high ratio. Where I live in Malaysia, in the peninsula there, it's 1 in 5,000. Where some of my students work in the Middle East, it's 1 in 4,000, 8,000, 10,000, 20,000. Where Shervin is working right now, one of my students, it's about 1 in several million. That's Iran. Why are we going on our mission trips to places that have a higher density of Adventists than we do? I'm not saying you shouldn't, or that you couldn't, or that you won't, or that it's bad or evil. I won't say any of that because that would all be untrue. The fact is that why would I ever complain about someone going somewhere to do mission work when most people do nothing? So I'm just glad if you want to go to Jamaica and raise them up to 1 in 6. But what I really wish is that you would go somewhere where Aub lives. Because 7 years ago he was looking and there was no one to help him. There was no one around that he could find. I'm sure I'm the first Adventist he ever encountered in his whole life. That's where I wish you would go the next time you choose somewhere to go. I wish. Shervin grew up in Iran, and his mother developed breast cancer, and because of that, she began to lose confidence in Islam, and she decided to find something better. So she decided to visit a Christian church. She took little Shervin with her. He was 5 years old at this point, and the church would not let her in. They were afraid of ramifications. They would not permit her to enter. So she found some Zoroastrians that would share with her, and she ended up kind of moving that direction, but it didn't help, and she died. So Shervin grew up, and when he became a teenager, he came to Malaysia to study. Lots of people do. I live in Malaysia right now, and I have friends from Pakistan, from Iraq, from Iran, from Bangladesh, from really just about every Muslim country out there. They come to study there in a nice, stable, tropical place. So that's where Shervin came. And while he was in university, he decided to give Christianity another try. He was looking through the students in his university. He found a young lady that he thought looked like a pretty quality girl, and she was a Christian. He asked her to take him to church. She did. She took him to a different church than her own because she was afraid of ramifications. She took him to a Pentecostal church, and what he saw in the Pentecostal church didn't impress him too well. So he decided that's not for him. But a couple years later, when his life had gotten really bad and he had been using alcohol and drugs, which he shouldn't use as a human, much less as a Muslim, he decided to give Christianity another try. And he found another quality girl. And he asked her to take him to church. And she did, and she was a Seventh-day Adventist. And she took him to a Seventh-day Adventist church. and he loved what he found. You know who he saw at that Adventist church? The first girl. There's a lot of fear in the world. A lot of fear. When I went to Malaysia and began reaching out to Muslims there, every single time I would mention it, every church I would go to, someone would come up to me and with a serious face, they'd look at me and say, "Did you hear what happened?" Now, they didn't know that I knew that it happened 25 years ago. They all told me like it happened a week ago. They tell me about this one man that would reach out to Muslims and how he was killed in his church there in Malaysia. So I just have a thought for you. If your Christianity is real, I hope you have courage. If you don't, I don't think it's the real thing. I don't think it's real if it doesn't have courage with it. So Shervin became a Seventh-day Adventist. He came to study to be a missionary to his own. Before he even came to study, he'd already converted one of his Iranian friends, and she lives in Michigan now. She's an Adventist. Shervin was going door to door in the first few months of our school there 3 years ago when he met a lady who was interested in the truth. He sold her a great controversy. She bought it, and a few minutes later, her nephew came in and saw that she had bought a Christian book, and it made him so angry. He went outside and found Shervin. He raised up a mob. I'm not sure what the mob was going to do, but someone called the police. The police came and arrested all my students. They put them in jail for a day, and they let them out without charging them. It was just wonderful, because since then I've only got serious students, full of courage, not afraid, knocking hundreds of thousands of doors every year. They were knocking them last week. They're going to keep doing it. That was a long adult story. Did you get a moral? Did you learn something? I hope you got something there. Turn in your Bibles to Matthew chapter 14. Matthew chapter 14, and looking at verse 23. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the even was come, he was there alone. Did Jesus need alone time? Yes. You need alone time. Even if all your friends are disciples, you need alone time. Look down at verse 26. And when the disciples saw him, that is Jesus, walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a spirit," and they cried out for fear. In Malaysia, people worry a lot about spirits. Adventist young people worry about spirits. The Orrin Osley people I give studies to would tell me about certain places in the jungle not to go because the spirits there kill people. I said, let's go. I said, I'm not afraid of spirits. Amen. We don't need to be afraid of spirits. Amen. Verse 27. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, don't be afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be you, bid me come to you on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said to him, O you of, what are the next two words? Little faith, why did you doubt? Did Peter have strong faith or weak faith? Well, you know it has to be weak faith because Jesus said so. But if it wasn't for Jesus saying so, you wouldn't be so sure because he had enough faith to get out of the boat, right? That's a bit. In a storm, he had enough. And as soon as he began to sink, who did he cry to? And was his faith sufficient to get help? It was. So if Jesus hadn't said that, I think we wouldn't have been so harsh in our opinion of his faith. But Jesus tells the truth, and he doesn't flatter us. And he might be saying to you, "O you of little faith." He said that to Peter. Go forward 2 chapters to chapter 16. 2 chapters, chapter 16, verse 8. Oh, we need to go a little higher to make any sense out of it. Go to verse 5. And when his disciples were come to the other side, they had forgotten to take bread. Not that they didn't have resources to get bread. Why didn't they have bread according to verse 5? I think many times when we fall into temptation, when we are discouraged, when bitterness begins to form inside of us, when the Word of God has not seemed sufficient to hold us up and keep us up, the whole problem is we forgot to take bread. It's not that the promises were deficient. It's not that they weren't here. It's that we didn't take them. We didn't use them. I mean, the bread was available. Anyway, they didn't have it. Why didn't they have it? They forgot to take it. Verse 6. Then Jesus said to them, "Take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees." And they reasoned among themselves, saying, "It is because we have taken no bread." Which when Jesus perceived, he said to them, "O you of little faith." Some people feel like they can't understand the Bible. What I want you to see here is that when people misunderstood Jesus, he diagnosed the problem very quickly. They misunderstood him, and what was the diagnosis? Their faith was small. Well, let me explain that to you a little bit as I understand it. I'm not sure I know it right. I'm going to tell you how I think it is. You're going to have to look into it yourself. I think it's like this, that when our faith is small, we are so easily distracted by things like problems, hunger, waves, embarrassment, fear, shame. Those things just make us forget about the most important things. Jesus is here. Jesus feeds 4,000 or 5,000 people when he wants to. Jesus is walking on water right now. We know those things. If you had asked the disciples about those things, they would have got the answer right on the quiz. But they weren't thinking about it right then because they were thinking about something else. They were embarrassed, they were hungry, they were scared, they were perplexed. And those emotions, if you will, just clouded their experience, and temporarily they forgot about Jesus. That's what little faith is like. It's an up and down experience. You walk on water, you sink. You help distribute the food to 5,000 people, you forget to take bread, and you're ashamed. It's like that. When your faith is small, it's like that. Verse 8, continuing. Why do you reason among yourselves because you've brought no bread? Do you not yet understand, neither remember the 5 loaves and the 5,000 and how many baskets you took up? Neither the 7 loaves and the 4,000 and how many baskets you took up? How is it that you do not understand that I spake it not to you concerning bread, that you should beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees? So it's interesting that in chapters 14 and 16, Jesus speaks to one or more of the disciples and says they have weak faith. Do you know that Jesus never tells the disciples that they have strong faith? He never, ever says that. But look at chapter 15. It's right in the middle between these two chapters. Matthew chapter 15, going to verse 21. Then Jesus went from there and departed into the coast of Tyre and Sidon. That's like going to Quebec. I mean, it's a place where people are less Christian. Some of you are from there. It's less Christian, isn't it? Less Christian. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is terribly vexed with a devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she cries after us. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I hope when you read this that you feel kind of badly about what's going on here, because that means that you're actually reading it. If you're just kind of skimming it, you might not actually catch anything that's going on, but at least the first time you read this, you should have wondered what Jesus was thinking. It should have bothered you at least a little bit, I think, the first time that you read it. And then it gets worse. Verse 25. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, It is not appropriate to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. So I lived for a number of years before I moved to Malaysia. I lived in Arkansas in a racially tense area. It's a place where you have white churches and black churches and not many churches that have white and black people together. My black students there were sometimes stopped by police for no reason at all except that they were driving. And so it's a place where, because there is some of that racial distance and tension, you have to be a little bit careful what you say. And I know there, if I was ever talking to a black person and I made a metaphor about the two of us that compared him or her to a dog, that would go over very badly. Right? But Jesus is in a racially tense situation where there is high prejudice, and he's talking to the out group, and he makes a metaphor that compares her to and it ought to just make you wonder a little bit when you read it, at least if you're paying attention. Verse 27, and she said, Truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table. She said, Jesus, if I'm a dog, I want to be your pet. Notice what Jesus says to her. Then Jesus answered and said to her, O woman, great is your... Be it unto you even as you desire. He never said that to the disciples. Never. I'm going to tell you how I resolve the difficulty I have with this passage. It's the same way I resolve the fact that I can't see stars on a sunny day. I think that if Jesus had not put this woman to a very difficult test, you never would have seen what great faith looks like. It never would have shown up. You couldn't have seen it. It would have been there all right, but you wouldn't have known. He put her to a hard one, and did she come out shining? She had great faith. Great faith isn't so sensitive. Do you see that? observe some things about her here. Great faith wasn't asking something for herself, but was asking for someone else. Great faith was earnest. Do you see that? That great faith was earnest? She was beseeching Jesus. She was pleading with him. Do you see that she didn't feel like she deserved anything from him? Do you see that? Turn to chapter 8. Matthew chapter 8. It's the only other place where Jesus says to someone that they have great faith. Matthew chapter 8, looking at verse 5. Matthew chapter 8, looking at verse 5. And when Jesus was entered into Capernaum, there came to him a centurion beseeching him. Already there are some things in common here. This man is not part of the church. Do you know the woman wasn't part of the church either? This man isn't part of the church. Also, do you see this man is earnest just like she was? How does this man approach Jesus? Does he come to Jesus and talk to him just kind of nonchalantly, like you might address like your peer, like your roommate in school? Does he talk to him like that? No, he really looks up to him. His earnestness is an evidence of his humility. Let me say that backwards, how I think it is. I think my prayer and your prayers, our lack of earnestness is a lack of humility. When we talk to God as if we're almost on a peer level, it shows that there's a disconnect in our mind between who he is and who we are. And this man sees, and so he comes to Jesus beseeching him. Verse 6. And saying, Lord, my servant lies at home, sick of the palsy, terribly tormented. Why, it's just like the woman. He's not asking something for himself. Verse 7, Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I do not deserve that you should come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant will be healed. Does this man feel like he deserves something from Jesus? He doesn't even deserve to have Jesus in his house. He doesn't say, Jesus, help me because I am a good guy. He says, Jesus, help me because I need it. That's the only argument he has in his prayer. It's not because I'm so good. It's because really my servant needs help. But I don't feel like I deserve anything from you. But I know, Jesus, you have some authority. When I tell a servant to do something, he does it. That's how it is for you with your words. Just speak and it's going to be okay. Verse 10. When Jesus heard it, he marveled. That verb marveled will teach you something about the nature of Christ if you think about it long enough. When Jesus heard it, he marveled and said to them that followed, Truly I say to you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in. So let me ask you, who has greater faith? Mary, the mother of Jesus, or the soldier? It's the soldier. What about Peter and James and John, or the soldier? It's the soldier. That's what Jesus just said, right? So what I learn in these two chapters about great faith is A, it probably isn't inside the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I suppose in Presque Isle, Caribou, and you've come from a long ways here. The people I've talked to are from like Massachusetts and Canada. So I suppose in your area that the strongest, most spiritually connected people with the most faith probably don't even know the three angels' messages. They probably don't. And if you think the reason that you know it and they don't is because you're more spiritual, you ought to just check out Matthew 8 and 14 and 15 and 16. It's not entirely likely that that's the reason. It's more likely that you know the truth because someone shared it with you and it makes good sense. Or actually, that's not even the most likely reason. Most likely, someone shared it with your grandparents. And then you sort of got it that way. It doesn't require spirituality to recognize the sensibility of the truth. It just requires thinking and reading or listening. What I'm trying to say, though you might not like it, but it's the truth, is you probably aren't the most spiritual people in Maine. You're just the most responsible people. Right? I mean, it's the truth you have that makes you responsible. We have a debt to people based upon the truth we have. My wallet's not in my pocket, but you can pretend it is. Suppose I gave you a 100,000 rupiah note, and I gave it to you right there in the middle, and I said, would you please give this to my wife? That's her over there with the white, is that a blouse, Heidi? What would you call that? Anyway, sweater, whatever she's wearing, that's her kind of blushing right there. If I gave you that 100,000 rupiah note and told you to give it to her, it wouldn't make her rich. It's worth about $9. If you pocket it, that's theft. Even if I put it in your hand, it's still theft. Can you all see that? That to pocket it is theft, even if I put it in your hand? Because when I gave it to you, it wasn't for you. I'm trying to explain something to you about the truth. If you're not sharing it, you're delinquent. Do you understand? This is why Paul could say, I'm a debtor to the Greeks and the barbarians, and he had never even met them. It's not because they had done something and so he owed them a reciprocal help. That wasn't it. It's because he had the truth and they didn't. And the truth he had was for them, so he had a debt to them. That's why you can never, that's why Paul says that in Romans 13, owe no man anything but to love one another, because you can't get out of that one. You can't get out of it. And the love he's talking about is the one that would make you share. If you don't share, you're delinquent. So what is great faith like? The first idea I'm sharing with you is that great faith probably isn't in the church. But the faith you have might get you out of the water. And it might even get you out of the boat sometimes, and you might look really impressive for a while. Please don't be very impressed with people that get out of the boat. When you're very impressed with people that get out of the boat, you set them up for a fall. Not everyone gets up like Peter did. Don't be so impressed with people. Great faith isn't selfish in its prayer life. Great faith is earnest in its prayer. Great faith pushes through apparent obstacles and prejudice and difficulties to get to what it continues holding on. That's what great faith is like. What is little faith like? Little faith is too easily distracted. Little faith easily sees those waves and the storm and the troubles. Little faith forgets, it doesn't forget the facts. It doesn't think about the facts. It forgets about them momentarily. It doesn't forget that they're true. It forgets to think about them. Do you understand those two types of forgetting? You can forget who the president is. That's almost impossible right now, right? Or you can not be thinking about it. That second type of forgetfulness is the one that gets us. That's the kind that little faith has. It forgets about the presence of Jesus, so it doesn't have his presence when it needs it. Turn to Luke chapter 17. Luke chapter 17 and verse 5. And the apostles said unto the Lord, increase our faith. Do you see from what we've read tonight that they understood the situation after being embarrassed a bit? 17:5, Lord, increase our faith. I don't think they got what they were looking for, because when people come to Jesus and ask for things like, if you will, you can make me clean, or that I would receive my sight, it's not many seconds before they can see or their leprosy is gone. I think the disciples were sort of hoping with their weak faith that Jesus would put his hand on them and say, be strong. And that's not what happened. Because faith is something like character. It can't be strengthened by miracle. It's more like a plant. It has to be cultivated. It has to be used. Faith is an experience. Really, faith is part of your character. And if God gave it to you by miracle, it would bypass the entire reason for the great controversy. Really, what God is doing is he is helping you cultivate your faith. Look at the two lessons he taught here. There are two lessons he gives in answer to that. Verse 6. And the Lord said, if you had faith like a grain of mustard seed, you might say to the sycamore tree, be thou plucked up by the root, and be thou planted in the sea, and it would obey you. I grew up in Alaska, and within sight of two mountain ranges, the Brooks Range to the north and the Alaska Range to the south. And no one in Alaska apparently has ever had enough faith to move one of those mountains. Right? They're all right where they've been for a very long time. Do you know I read this wrong? It doesn't say if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can move a mountain. It doesn't say that. It says if you have faith with the qualities of a mustard seed. And what are the qualities of a mustard seed? Jesus did say about mustard seeds two things that show you their main quality. He said it starts out smallest and it becomes biggest. If you start smallest and become biggest, you grow most. Was that English? Some of you are teachers. Was that English? It was meant to be English. Is there a word mostest? No? So anyway, you understand the idea regardless, right? The character, the quality of mustard seed is that it really grows. It grows so much. Verse 7. But which of you, having a servant plowing or feeding cattle, will say to him, by and by? That's Old English for immediately. Will say to him immediately when he comes in from the field, go and sit down and eat. And will not instead say to him, make ready wherewith I may sup, and gird yourself and serve me till I have eaten and drunken, and afterward you shall eat and drink. Does he thank that servant because he did the things that were commanded him? I don't think so. That verse 9 also bothered me for some time. Do you say thank you when people serve you? But imagine that you're at Subway. You order your sub. Some of you get it without the cheese. I do too, by the way. I do. Suppose that lady hands it to you, and she says, this looks very good. Have a seat. I'm going to eat this one. I'll make you another one in 10 minutes. How will you feel about that? You won't feel too good about that. Because when you pay for it, you're expecting service. That's the way it was with most servants in the time of Jesus. Many servants were discharging debts. So here you go bankrupt. There you might work for 6 years for the guy. So when he serves you, it's not because he's just a volunteer. And it's not like he's just kindly doing this. What he's doing is paying a debt. And you're expecting that. Look at verse 10. So likewise you, when you shall have done all those things which are commanded you, say, we are unprofitable servants. we have done that which was our duty to do. Did you understand that? If you pray like this, Father in heaven, please help me, I've been trying so hard, then you don't get it. If you pray, please heal me from this cancer, I've decided to live healthy, you don't get it. Verse 10 says, God doesn't owe us. He doesn't owe us anything. What we owe him is one entire life. And we haven't delivered that. So we're in debt to him hopelessly. And if we did everything perfect from today on, he still wouldn't owe us anything. We would still be hopelessly in debt. There is just no way that we can ever do more than our duty because we owe God 100%. So what should you say according to Jesus in verse 10 when you've done everything right for the day? What should you say? I haven't done anything special. Nothing special here, Lord. All I did is what I was supposed to do. That is it. You know, these are the two principles on which faith is based. That first principle from verse 6 is that faith grows by cultivation. The principle from verses 7 to 10 is that God never owes us anything. Faith never depends on merit. It never talks or acts like it deserves something. There's nothing in faith that would ever make you feel like your righteous acts somehow put you in good standing. Faith isn't like that. Faith understands it has a duty to do the right thing. But if it manages to get the right thing done, it hasn't done anything special. It's only done what it's supposed to do. That's what great faith is like. So let me summarize what I've said tonight, and we'll close. First, I told you a children's story, but it was really for all of you. How long a time should there be between when you get in a fight and when you make it right? Nothing. You sit there on the ground, a dog is coming. How much time before you make things right with your brother or your uncle? You should do it tonight. There's no sense. You've been making some mistakes. You're so discouraged. Well, of course you are. When's the devil going to attack you? It's when you make your mistakes. Please get in a tree. You understand what I'm saying? Just right away. You don't need any more time. Just go. Don't brush yourself off. Just go. You can check yourself out when you get in the tree. Then there is a story for the adults. So I don't want to cry when I tell you, but I think about it. But I really think we have a lot of work to do, and it's not in the places where we're doing it. I mean, there is work to be done there, but let me just say plainly, please don't send any more missionaries to Micronesia. Do you realize by now they should have their own teachers and their own nurses and their own pastors and their own chaplains and their own? They should have had that 40 years ago. We have really messed them up. You understand what I'm saying? It's like a welfare society in the mission field. Please, if you're going to do something, do it where something is needed. Don't make weaklings become strong. Pray for Shervin. He's in Iran right now. It's a little discouraging for him to work there. He wrote me a couple weeks ago and said, suppose I have a convert. They're going to get killed right away. They can't even get a job. So Shervin would like to start a company to hire them. If you want to help him with that, I can tell you how. It's a good idea, don't you think? Yeah. To make a fold before you try to buy some sheep. And Aub, that man with the motorcycle, He's taking Bible studies. He's dubious. I mean, he's not taking studies like this, oh boy, I found the truth. It's not like that at all. He really thinks that Christianity isn't it. He thinks Hinduism is it. But he's willing to give it a shot because he admitted that Hinduism hasn't helped him quit smoking. I said Jesus will. Would you please pray for him? And his daughter, Bonnie. I gave her the gospel this week. I sent her the story about Jesus and the atonement. She's never heard it before. It's new for her. She said she'll think about it. You know, a Muslim mother and a Hindu father. Life is confusing for her right now. And pray for our students. I mean, if you find me on Facebook, you'll find one of them spent 3 weeks in jail this summer. And he's so thankful. The guards probably never, ever met a real Christian before. He wasn't praying to get out. It's the real thing. But we don't have a lot of the real thing here. So we looked at great faith and little faith. And the good news for Seventh-day Adventists is that even though we have little faith, Jesus is willing to cultivate it. He's able to take Peter and James and John and make them strong, and then send them someplace they never thought they'd go, and give Peter strength to die there, and James strength to die there. And he gave John strength to die there, but he didn't die the way that he had strength to die. I think as soon as there's great faith, the work's going to get done. So please, would you take care of your plants? Stretch your cords. Do your watering. Ask for things for other people. Be earnest. Don't get so confused and distracted by the things around you, your hunger and your emotions and the problems. Please, those things are pretty small compared to what's going on in this world. Please just come a step higher in what you're thinking about. I think if we cultivate great faith, God will use us. I suppose even right where you live, there are people who need the three angels' messages and who would accept them if you would meet them with a little more faith than you have right now. I suppose it's so. Amen. If you're happy to do so, kneel with me for a closing prayer. Our Father in heaven, I'm asking that you would please find a way to finish the work on this earth before we get older. Would you please use the handful of people working in Iran and the score working in Malaysia? And would you please redistribute the hundreds working where they don't need to be right now? And help us to cultivate a faith that matches what needs to be done. I thank you and I ask for these gifts in the name of Jesus. Amen.